Hello everyone. My name is Yinka Freeman. I am here logging on from San Diego, California, and I am really excited to be here with you all today. Hi Sue, hi Kim, hi Mary. Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be joined by four really awesome people that I truly have gotten to really respect throughout this past year of knowing them. And I'm really excited for this conversation as a planner because we are going to be talking all about ROIs, your return on investment. Um, as an event planner, I understand that the importance of an event ROI, and here I am assuming that everyone logged on knows what ROI is. If you do not, an ROI stands for return on investment. It is really critical when you're talking to your stakeholders and even to your attendees about how they should invest in your event. And while there are many different types of methods and principles you can use to measure ROI in in-person events, virtual events are a little bit different. Sponsorship engagement works a little bit differently when you're in a virtual setting. Attendees take in content differently than they do in an in-person event. And all of these expectations are changing all the time as people want more from their virtual experiences. So with all of this in mind, I want to take some time today and take a look at some of the ways event producers like ourselves can approach ROI when it comes to virtual events, from attendees and sponsors to exhibitors and clients. By understanding what their events needs are and what they really want from your event, you can build the kind of experiences that make your virtual event a success. I am joined by four experienced producers in the live and the virtual event space, and I cannot wait to get the conversation started. So let's begin. First up, I would like to introduce Kimberly Bone. Kimberly has over 25 years of experience in the special event industry, and I love this, and she calls herself an event storyteller. Kimberly is deeply involved in the events industry. She is a past president of the Toronto chapter of ILEA, which is the International Live Events Association, and she was recently named one of the most influential event professionals in Canada by Biz Bash magazine. Come on up, Kimberly, and say hello. Hello. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kimberly.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here with everybody today.
Of course. Next up, I have Georgianne Getton. Georgianne is the face behind GSD with Georgie brand. She is also the lead execution strategist and founder of GSD Solutions. GSD Solutions is a branding and consulting agency that works with individuals and companies to develop inclusive, innovative, and experience-driven brands that increase customer engagement and sales. And a little interesting nugget that I just learned about Georgianne is that she was already an advocate for virtual events pre-COVID. So I'm really excited to hear her take on virtual events ROI. Come on up, Georgianne. All right, while we're waiting for Georgianne to come up, I'm going to intro our next. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Good. How are you?
Good. Excited to be here to share some insights and to talk with everyone.
Yeah, Ashley says you're a trendsetter.
Thank you.
Sue Sutcliffe has been in the digital marketing and virtual event space since 1995. COVID literally has nothing on her. She is a virtual event planner, promoter, and hostess for the World Event Center, a fully branded virtual event venue. She is also a sought-after digital marketing speaker and trainer who has propelled thousands of marketers, salespeople, and business owners to embrace their online power. Come on up, Sue, and join us. Hello.
Hey.
Last but certainly not least is Jared Goldsmith. Gerald is a Canadian small business community builder and is the embodiment of the small business spirit. He is an archaeologist and musician by education, and he founded ESAX, the Entrepreneur Social Advantage Experience, Ottawa's largest entrepreneur networking community for small businesses. Using Remo, Jared has pivoted to hosting remote events for others. And a fun fact is ESAX is actually how I got introduced to Remo. So I feel like we're having a little bit of a full circle moment here.
Wow.
In addition, he has over 600 YouTube videos on entrepreneurship and networking for small business on the ESAX channel. He hosts the ESAX podcast series and is the founder of Sax Appeal, Canada's premier saxophone ensemble. I should have asked you to play a little ditty for us.
Oh, thanks so much. You can catch us on YouTube. Pleasure to be here. Hi, Mom.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to just get into this conversation with everyone. For any of the audience members, if you have a question, if you want to come up on stage and ask a question, please feel free to just throw it in the chat. I'll pull you on up with us. Or if you want, you can use the Q&A as well and put your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to that. I will make sure that we get to that. And any audience members as well, if you see a question in the Q&A that you really want answered, please know that you can vote on it. All you have to do is click on the vote, and it'll come right up, and it'll notify me. So let's get started here with my list of questions. So my first question is, what is event ROI? What is worth measuring? And why should you measure anything from your event?
Well, maybe I'll start if that's all right. So, as a storyteller, I believe whether it's a live event, a virtual event, any kind of event, it has to have a purpose. Events are expensive, and you can't just throw an event without having something tangible people to walk away with, whether it's connection, whether it's understanding of your brand, whether it's a deeper appreciation for something. You need to understand what that core purpose is, and then everything builds around that. So I think ROI begins with what's your core purpose and understanding that in detail, and then constructing the whole event to deliver that core purpose to your attendees. And that's the only way that you're going to ensure that you get return on that investment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kimberly. And I would like to jump in and add on to what you just said, because a lot of folks, they just assume, I want to grow my list. Like that's just that's the least of it. You could get emails almost anywhere. You could buy them online. You could do so many things to get emails. But I think for events, especially virtual events, the engagement is like the key element of ROI. What comes after this? So like Kimberly said, you have to start with, what do you want to achieve? And then what comes after? So you have to think about the before, the during, and then the after when you're doing these virtual events or in-person events, just events overall, because that after part is what's gonna make sure that the longevity stays there. The before is making sure that you're prepared, you have an idea, this is your goal, this is your hope. During, you're setting up the stage for people to actually take these actions. And then the after is like, okay, they've taken these actions, now what next? Are they going to come back? Are they going to tell a friend? Are they going to spend some money, purchase something, evangelize about our brand? And that's the key element right there. What engagement and what post-event results are you looking for? And that will then, that's the return, right? That's the return on your initial investment that you made in the beginning.
It's also really important to remember that your attendees are probably looking for different types of ROI. If you have sponsors, they're looking for something different than an attendee or a booth participant. Let's say somebody who might have purchased a booth. How can you bring value to them? These are all questions that you need to ask and provide to them in order for them to get involved with your event.
I couldn't agree more. Building on that, I think I think life is better in teams. So as soon as we decide on what the purpose of an event is, I think we need to decide who needs to be on the bus and what do they need and how does it, and build all that, build the KPIs, key performance indicators into the plan. And by doing that, we can measure it, and that kind of guarantees a repeat gig, right? And continued success, rather than just being a one-hit wonder, which I think is, Georgie Ann spoke to, and I think that's just critical.
Well, and I think, Sue, what you were saying about the team, in that knowing that everybody's on the same page, everybody's working towards the same end result. And yes, absolutely, each stakeholder might have a different individual return on investment that they're looking for, but I think all of it has to be aligned for it to be successful.
Indeed.
Great, thank you. You actually hit a little bit on what my next question was going to be. So if anyone wants to expand on this, please do. What does virtual event ROI mean for different stakeholders? What does it mean for your attendees, your exhibitors, your speakers, your sponsor? What does it mean for you or your organization?
Oh, go ahead, Sue. You were about to start.
Oh, I was just going to say it really depends on the type of event you're running, right? And the purpose. So, if we're doing a fundraiser, then we want to raise gads of cash. And I think people are happy to give up their wallet if we provide them with fun and entertainment. So I think that's one thing that you could measure. But really, I think it depends on the type of event. Sometimes it's just a case of getting conversations with the right people. Maya Angelou made a comment that really resonated with me, and that is that people will forget what you say, but they won't forget how you make them feel. And I feel like virtual events is a way that, even if we can't connect in person, makes people feel a certain way. And at the end of the day, people don't go to traditionally, they haven't gone to trade shows and all these types of events just to show up and advertise. They've gone there to engage their audience. And I think at the end of the day, that's the big KPI is engagement.
I learned a new word today, Sue. Gads of money. I love it. That's a good one. Think back, like in real life, in-person events versus virtual events. Why does somebody want to sponsor your event? Because most often they want access to your database. They want to get their brand known through your clients, your contacts. How can you give them that? I would say most of the event is pre-event. The social media posts, because it's through your channels. If you're quite active on social media, maybe as an influencer perhaps, you want to have other people's content go through your channels promoting your stakeholders to bring value to them before they even walk through the virtual door.
I think that's absolutely true, Jared. And I also think that, as Sue was saying, the example of a fundraiser, the goal is gads of money for sure. But I think the deeper goal, leaning towards what Georgianne said, is creating connection between the attendees and the cause, and having them, not just pull out their wallet this time, but come next year and bring more people to pull out their wallets, and create that bond with whether it's the brand of the fundraiser, like the charity, and the cause of the charity, or whether it's for stakeholders, for sponsors, being seen, giving in that way is a really important thing these days. So that it's not about necessarily generating revenue for them. It's about generating social revenue, in terms of how they're perceived in the business world and in the circles that they're in. So I believe we have to dig deeper to really suss out those core wants and needs, and then communicate that.
Yeah, and just to add on like a final word on that topic is that everything that everybody says so far is 100% correct, and you have to figure out what's the type of event that you're having, and then what's the type of business that you are. And I would say this part is really key that a lot of people don't think of, especially when the pandemic hit. It was just like, I know virtual events, there's money, right? Great. That's the start. And then you have to really niche down, like what type of events are you doing? Are you an expert at the trade shows? Are you an expert at, knowing a little bit about a lot of things? Like that's also an area. Are you an expert at networking events? And then figuring out, okay, my clients, their ROIs look like this for this type of specific event, like, going back to the charity example that everyone mentioned, and asking those tough questions first before you even start thinking of what's the date of the event, what time, what's the floor map, etc. Asking the tough questions, like what do you count as success? Like asking that question directly to your audience, not to your audience, to your client. What would make this event successful? Because to one person it could be as a sponsor, collecting emails. That's all they want. They don't care about anything else. Another person would be having people try my product and sharing it on social media. The way you engage with those two different clients, they may be paying you the same exact amount of money, but what counts as success for them looks completely different. So one person wants to see a huge list of names. Another person would be like, if I have 5 names and they all tried it and posted on their page, that's more than enough. And you're getting, again, the same amount for each client. So just asking those tough questions in the beginning and including, what does your measure of success look like for this event? Like that should always be one of the questions. So how to prepare it for them. And I think Jared wanted to come back in.
Yeah, Georgianne, fantastic point, because so often we create our sponsorship documents, gold, platinum level, whatever, and here's what you get at the different options, because this is where we're event planners, this is what we're supposed to be doing. When was the last time you spoke to a potential sponsor and say, what can I offer you so that you'll get more value from your engagement with us? And you might be amazed at some of their thoughts that you might not have thought of, or a minor detail in your 20-page sponsorship document could be a huge issue for them. So you have to work with them and listen, ask them questions. So great comment, Georgianne. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, those are some great nuggets. Sue, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just love that. And I'd like to build on that. We do that every event, and like before and after. And actually the after, the debrief is just gold. Because then the customer really has an understanding and they're right in the moment. And I think, and they're the best ones to tell us what we can do better, what we can do more of, and how we can bring them more success. So I think having a debrief after every event and take the Kaizen approach. How can we do things better, faster, cheaper?
Sue, there's a question from the audience, and I think I'm gonna throw it to you because you had mentioned something about creating a feeling. So this question is, what might be the metrics of an event that creates a feeling? How would we define success?
I guess engagement would be one of the ways. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways, and really it's about what. I guess the feeling is pretty broad, right? So engagement in a charity might look like donating or pledging. It might also be, having conversations or leaving comments on a whiteboard, or, participating in the conversation and growing intellectual knowledge in that process. I think it really, of all events, it always comes down to engagement, no matter who the stakeholder is. I think it just has to come down to engagement, because everything else can be done by text, email, faster. But engagement, we have person to person, we have emotions, and I think that face to face interaction is just so valuable.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know about you, Sue, but I love events where the attendance stays high through the whole thing and the chat goes crazy. Like that is, when people are feeling what's happening, They've got authentic moments. I've done a number of charitable events, and even like I did a women's networking event where the keynote speaker got emotional talking about her own journey for success, right? Like when you can have those authentic moments, and the attendees, whether they're posting in the chat or whether they're commenting after the event, right? And extending the length of that event by sharing their thoughts and feelings about their experience, and that shared experience, that's success to me.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just add on to that as well. Just like the way I clarify it is emotions lead to engagement, period, point blank. And it doesn't matter what emotion, whether you get folks really mad, really sad, really happy. And that starts with storytelling. So both Kimberly and Sue mentioned, the speaker or the charity or the organization telling a story. If you heard the story of this great nonprofit that was started by John whoever 100 years ago, then his sons took it on, and then there was a tragic accident because they wanted to evolve the world and they're changing. You feel that you're like, I'm going to donate. I want you go off in the comments, you go off in the chat, because it's like, wow, like that's a person. You feel that journey, that pain, that happiness, that sadness. And, I think that is what really makes you say, wow, I'm going to come back again. I want to feel those feelings, and those are the emotions. So figuring out what emotions you want to pull from the audience, even, beforehand. So sometimes depending on the client that we're working with, we'll have this like storytelling, storyboarding session with them to figure out, okay, how are you going to tell this story? Like we have to, it might seem like a little of too much planning, but you want to, because at the end of the day, it's still business, but it's authentic storytelling. It's focusing on the emotion that you want most heightened, and then pulling that out of the audience in an authentic, natural, organic way, versus like, hey, I'm going to pay you to feel sad. I'm going to pay you to feel upset, or, to feel happy. It's just like, wow, like that story touched me so deeply. Like I'm going to take action in this way. I'm just going to follow them. And that's how most businesses from the beginning of time have worked. Like when you get someone to feel a strong emotion, that's when the engagement happens, and that's when the sales and growth happens.
It's easy to talk about gads of emotion, but I'm going to start saying that for a long time now. Thank you, Sue. You changed my life. But how do you give this emotion to people? How do you create an atmosphere? It's you as the event organizer, the person on stage, the MC. It's the way you talk. It's your body language. It's so much of the nonverbal communications that add value to your event. So if you're having more of a self-reflective mode, you speak a little slower. You might not have so many bright lights in your face, more relaxed. But if you want to have fun and happy people, then you've seen all the animators on TV. They're made for TV. They're loud. They're in your face. They're talking. Okay, well, there's a place for all that, but it's speaking to what your event is trying to accomplish, and we're having people do it.
I just want to read hi Alex, by the way. I just want to read the comment by Alex really fast, because I think it just hits on everything everyone has been saying, and it's a completely different industry, right? So there's an Emmy Award winning production company we work with and he said something compelling along those lines. I asked him how he sells his services when video production can be a commodity. He said the first thing he asked his client is, what emotion do you want to create? I think a lot of people forget that you really can create an emotion as you are building out an event. It's not just something fun to go to, but you really can tap into the psychology of people and how they can do really whatever it is you want them to do, whether it's dance or donate, whatever it is. So thank you, Alex, for that comment. Does anyone have anything to add? Intentional event design. Yes, exactly.
Actually, I have a thought, because I'm all into networking. I came across a guy years ago who was a coach, and he said, okay, how many of you are looking for a tennis player in a room of 40 people? Like one person raised their hand. says, okay, he has a client who is a tennis instructor. He says he's worked with him. He says, okay, well, let's word the way you promote yourself a little differently. You take kids, you tire them out, and you give them back to your parents. Then he said, how many of you are looking for a place to get your kids run around and get all their energy out for about 2 hours? Half the room raised their hand. So it's not, yes, you're a tennis instructor, but if you say, I'm a tennis instructor, I'm a video producer, it's what's the feeling, the end goal that you want to have people remember you by? Because there's a lot of people out there who do the same thing. You have to stand out and show that experience and why you're the best for that perspective. Good, Kim. Yeah.
I love that, Jared. And I think honestly that one of the mistakes I see a lot with event planning is that people aren't asking enough questions. They're not digging deep enough into the objective. They're not digging deep enough into all the stakeholders' objectives and planning that, baking that into the plan. And I think if we can do that and get really deep on who the customer is and who their customer is and who we're actually what everybody's agenda is, I guess, then at that point you can put everybody in the right position with the various tools that we have as virtual hosts, right? So.
Great, thank you, Sue. So in the live event space, I find it a little bit easier to gather data on ROI. It's a little bit more difficult, and I think in the virtual space, and we've really exploded. It's been about a year, right, in the virtual space. So I really think as virtual events develop, we'll have more data on ROIs. But with what we currently have, when someone is looking at a virtual event platform to host their event, what are some of the key data that a virtual event platform needs to provide to you so that you can then take that and share with your stakeholders what their ROIs are?
Well, I'll speak to that as far as Remo goes. I love the fact that Remo allows us to actually put a banner up and pop-up offer for sponsors, but even just access to the chat. That is data that is so powerful because that's the feedback of the guests. That's like the icing on the cake. That tells us all about what the experience meant to them. And I think it raises a whole bunch of clues for things that we can do to take on to new events, and basically do it better next time, like that audience engagement. So I think those are the two metrics that I like the best, being able to track how many people go through to a special offer and really the audience engagement. I mean, knowing how many, like Kimberly said, when a chat goes live, you hit it because everybody is in the moment, everybody is engaged. So I think that's the key there in my mind. That's the number one stat there.
I really like length of stay. So, the fact that somebody logged in and stayed the entire event, or how many people, that shows you engagement. That shows you who's on the bus, who's leaned in and appreciated what you had to offer. And then it's the post engagement analytics. So, it's important to share those hashtags and share those link points so that you can see how the event extends beyond. But I really like the length of stay. I think that's gold as well.
Yeah, and just, definitely the tools that have been mentioned so far, the chat, length of stay, who's clicking on what banners. And there's another one that certain platforms are doing that it's not on a lot, but it shows like who connected with who. I forgot, I use this tool. Every day there's so many platforms coming. I forgot the name of the platform, but it showed you who connected with who. I think it also does it on Hopin, if I'm not wrong, like who messaged each other or exchange contacts. And Hover, Hover is the platform, and so that allows you to really see, okay, what happens next? And in a slightly creepy way, you could kind of, depending on the client or what the goal is, you could say, okay, that person connected with that person on LinkedIn. And then in 3 months from now, you see, okay, they're doing a podcast together. They're doing some type of partnerships, and you know where the source was. And so we know this happens in a lot in affiliate programs. And that's, that I think is one of the really special things. So that affiliate traction. Yinka mentioned earlier that she got introduced to Remo by Jared at ESAX, right? In a couple months or, a couple of years, that source connection might be forgotten. But if you could then go back to the data and see, okay, wow, like, this transaction has gone on to happen because of that initial connection that I made through this virtual event. And then you could sell that. You could go back and sell that. People have talked about, these two people met at or event and then they got married. For example, dating platforms. Like, this is what they want to sell. Like, if you're using that type of, if that's your client, this information is gold to them. Like, who connected after the event, I think is really one of the features that more and more platforms should include. And I know, slowly different platforms are including it. I don't know how you track it. I don't know the code, the back end, but I think that is a really important thing to track so you can know the source of that initial spark and that first connection.
Yeah. And I would also add after event surveys. So being able to find out, like, after the event's over, asking them point blank what they liked, what they recommend, did they buy another ticket? And maybe that's another KPI. How many tickets did we sell to the next event? If we could measure that, that really speaks to success, I think, on a whole bunch of different levels.
I love the idea of surveys, but at the end of the day, people don't often take time to do it. That's why another way to engage your stakeholders and sponsors and people who are looking for ROIs, ask them if they'd be so kind to offer a door prize of sorts that you could provide to people who fill out a survey. Again, people like to be rewarded for stuff. And the content that you receive from the surveys, like you said, Sue, and what did you like? What didn't you like? How can we make it better? What, would you come back again? Would you sell your friends? Like, that's great content. Hearing it directly from the attendees, who's the market.
Great. Sue, you hit on KPIs, so I want to move in that direction. Let's talk about KPIs a little bit. KPIs, key performance indicators. How do you identify what your KPIs are as an organization or an event producer? And how do you use that data when it comes to analyzing your ROI for your events?
That's a great question. When I'm planning an event, I go deep into objectives, what everybody's objectives are. And then I try to build in a win-win plan. And that win-win plan includes KPIs, things that we can measure, because we know that what we measure will grow. So some of the things that we measure is the amount of chat activity, the amount of attendees, the amount of people that posted a selfie with a hashtag. All these things are, it's really a mix, and it's different depending on the event. But I think really it's wise for event planners to actually, not only work it into the plan, but ask the customer, what does success look like for you? Thank you for your money. What does success look like for you? What do you find valuable? And then figure out how to measure that. And that's what you have to report back on, because then the next time you say, hey, I've got this event you might want to be involved in, it's like, there's no question. Delivering, like Jared said, it's all about creating win-wins, because if you can create that win-win and track those KPIs, then there is no question. It removes sales from the thing. You just create win-wins and invite the right people to the table. So that's my thought on KPIs.
I feel like we've kind of come in that it all stems from the core purpose and the core meaning of the event, the message that you're trying to communicate. And then, to develop those KPIs, you need to be looking at them through the lens of that, right? Because, it's in some ways counterproductive to have those be separate from being driven by your core message, right? I think it, and sometimes Sometimes people say, oh, I want to say this, but I want to get 10,000 followers. Well, do those two things align, right? Is your core message and the purpose that you're doing this and the thing that you want people to walk away with going to translate to this, to that particular objective, or can we do a second event that will hit that objective while we take care of this first objective. So I just think that it's important to look at everything through the lens of the core objective, and because sometimes wants and wishes don't align with that, and you become too fragmented in your focus for the event.
I think a lot of people get carried away with an event. I mean, there is so much potential, especially with digital. So, mapping that out at the beginning, I think, is so key, right? Because then we can say, okay, we could do that. But I think a lot of times the problem with marketing is people are trying to do too much. And really being laser focused on exactly what your purpose is critical. And things either fit or they don't. And so you may have all these different tools that you can access through virtual tools, but the key is using the ones that are going to drive your purpose. So.
And just to add on to both, Kimberly and Sue, they're making the same point of the fact that people are going to want more. And sometimes you, as the producer, the host, you have to say, hey, that's great, but that's 4 events over 2 years, not one event in 2 hours. And so what I've seen is that a lot of folks don't understand how the internet, how anything works, like just how things work, whether it's the internet, whether it's in person. They'll say, hey, can you make that button purple instead of red on that platform? And it's like, no, why not? It's just a change of a color. It doesn't work that way. You need a custom plan. In order for that custom plan, that's $20,000 more. Would you like $20,000 for a red button? And then you can have to prioritize. So, with that, when you get that initial intake and they say, okay, these are all the things that we want to have at the event, all these pinwheels and flying things, you have to narrow down, okay, what is essential, right? This is what could happen for this first event, and then you have to leave the breadcrumbs for the following events and for the following programs. And you can upsell this as the host and say, hey, one event is not going to cut it. If you really, really, really want these results, one event is not going to cut it. We have to spread it over this amount of time, and just try your best to explain why, showing this is why, and I have a bad habit of, I like to over explain. That's just my nature. And I had to kind of learn how to kind of cut it back and say, this is why I'm recommending this. And it's because I have X amount of years in this industry. I just know what I'm talking about. Here's a smaller version of the explanation, because sometimes going into it too much, they might think there's like a loophole. It's like, if you want a loophole, then you're not going to get the quality. If you want cheap and fast, you're not going to get high impact, high quality, long lasting. So I can give you cheap and fast and with all these bells and whistles, but this result won't happen. So you have to really just narrow it back in. And like that's a few comments ago, it said, somebody said, I'm not selling just this event. I'm selling human connection. I'm selling engagement. I'm selling increase sales. Like, that's what I'm selling. So if you want cheap and fast and funky and all sorts of mess, that's just not even me. Like, work with somebody else at this point. So really narrowing it down and getting kind of strict and niche in that way with yourself as well as your clients.
I have a question from the audience from Mary. Does anyone have a template for KPIs?
Something external, but maybe that's something that we could put together, because I think a lot of it happens, it's and slightly a little bit IP, like that's just like how we work within our business, but I'm pretty sure we could all put something simple together of like, here's the starting point, and then where you want people to end up, because it really so much varies on your industry, your end goals. So I'll give an example. Just before we started the session, we were all talking about, are we going to go back to in person? Are we going to stay virtual? And like Kimberly's like, I'm going to stay with remote. I'm going to do in-person events, because that's the type of business she has. She wants to create these elaborate experiences, multi-part conferences that are from start to finish. She just doesn't want to do like a quick impromptu. She can, but that's not what her bread and butter, that's not what brings her joy, makes her business thrive. Jared can do, I'm pretty sure, multi-big conferences like that, but he's focused on the networking element. He wants people to connect, so he's not going to go into that. So what Jared's KPI document might look like versus what my KPI, Sue's KPI, Kimberly's KPI document is completely different. So you have to really start with, what is my business? What is my industry? And we hear this all the time. There's enough room for every single body. And it's because now that we've kind of gotten over the mess of everyone being in virtual because that's all we had, now we can get back to reality of like, this is my niche. This is what I focus on. These are the clients that I want. And if other clients come to me with that need, I'm not going to try to figure it out in my business. I'm going to say, hey, Kimberly, this client needs your very special expertise. Maybe we work out some type of partnership or whatever, affiliate programs, various things out there, and just say, hey, this is not for me. I'm going to focus on what's for me, my KPIs, my clients, my industry.
I think it's so often that as event planners, we want to accommodate anybody's budget, anybody's needs. And we'll say, yes, 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 yes. And then we say, oh, shoot, that's going to take up a lot of time. I don't have the experience. That's not really part of my model. Everybody talks about being true to yourself. Why did you start your business in the first place? What is your specialty, which I think I've heard from some of you on the panel today, and stay with it. If somebody says, hey, Jared, can you organize an in-person wedding show for me? Nope, I'd pass you to some contacts I know. I wouldn't do that. If you're looking for musicians, that's another story. But for virtual planning, yeah, you're right, Georgia. And everybody has their specialties, and you cannot be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. And just knowing, what is your main demographic? Yeah, if it's a slow week, you might pick up another job that you might not have thought about, but be very specific on who your target market is.
I think that's really relevant, Jared, because honestly, the whole world is our oyster. But do we really want to have them all as clients? And, the biggest market mistake I see is people not niching deep. And as entrepreneurs, we have a choice of who we serve. And honestly, there's that secret sauce where we are amazing. And that's a way better place to live. So I would urge everyone to look at that and partner, as Georgia Ann said, because I think that's really key. Everybody, the industries are completely radically different. Even of the people that are on the stage right here today, we all do different things. So it just kind of makes sense. So I would second that.
Thank you all. Mary, I am going to put this link in the chat. It is a template that I like to use for return on investment. It's not necessarily about KPIs, but I think it might be a good start. You can download that template and use it however you would like to use it. It's great. I really enjoy it. For everyone else as well, it's in the chat. I want to talk a little bit about event sponsorships, because when you talk about ROIs, you cannot ignore event sponsorships. And I feel like a lot of sponsors, one of the first things that they ask you post-event, what was the ROI? What is my ROI? So let's talk about that. What are companies, organizations, what are they looking for when they sponsor an event? And what are they looking for when they sponsor a virtual event? Because like we've said, in-person and virtual, completely different beasts. Go ahead, Jared.
I think depending on the level of sponsorships you have, engagement, like think about it. If somebody's going to pay you X amount of money to be the premier, sponsored by, co-hosted, whatever, you should probably consider giving them 4 or 5 minutes of speaking time in front of your entire audience, because that's their main ROI. They're talking one-on-one. They're sharing a video to everybody versus just having little booths where people could come in and talk. Maybe something else to consider is, well, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, you may or may not be able to send email lists from all of your attendees to your sponsors. Some wedding shows allow that, some don't. So that, but I've had one client say, I'm giving you all this money. Can we have the list of attendees? He was a repeat client, and I knew that he wouldn't spam everybody. And I said, sure. But other people who just want it for the sake of having it, I said, no.
I think that there's a lot of different things you could do, but one of the things that we build into our sponsorship packages is helping them develop a strategy. So it's not just having an offer that like a low cost, no cost offer, an irresistible offer, but also mentioning it at various times in the event. So we can do that by bringing them to the stage or doing it in the chat, pointing them at, giving them a booth. But at the end of the day, I think most of the sponsors I deal with, they're looking for leads. And in order to get leads, like, it's marketing 101, right? People are not going to walk in and buy your main product. They want to taste you first. They want to get a sample of you first. And so I think those same rules apply to event marketing. We have to layer it. So leading up into an event, even after an event, but certainly during an event, more than one time. It's not good enough just to mention the speaker. I've seen a lot of events where they'll just show somebody's logo. A logo means nothing to anybody, right? So I think at the end of the day, I think it's got to be like kind of a layered approach and not just one, like throughout the whole journey of the event.
Can I have you, or want Sue to expand a little bit, or maybe some examples when you talk about layering? What does that look like?
For sure. So one of the things that we do for, like, I hold a monthly event. It's for small businesses, and typically we lead up into the event by inviting them out to tape a 30-second infomercial, because that way we can keep it timely and they can get it just right before it goes live. And then we post that video coming up into the event. Hey, look who's coming this month, and then we post imagery of them and kind of what they do. So there's 2 layers there before they even come to the show. Then we do a culminative video of all the experts that are going to be there, so they get some more airtime, more exposure to what's going on. When the event time comes, of course, they get their video, they get a table with it named after them so they can talk to people. We encourage them in the video to mention that special offer. So don't just come to my table and enter so you could win this. And so they each time they're layering that special offer is referred to. And so when the event comes, people know exactly where they're going. And it seems to me that a lot of people that are out there in the market that are actually doing these events and stuff, they may be very successful in business, but they don't necessarily have a strong marketing strategy. Like, I am seeing some nods. So, and at the end of the day, if the carrot is where we want to get them, we have to help them find the carrot no matter what. So that's what that layered approach means. And it goes right through to the end. So if you miss the event, guess what? All the offers are located on our Facebook page. Circle back there. You can still benefit from this. And that's a kind of a comprehensive journey of a small gig that doesn't have to actually cost that much if you do it in volume, but it means a whole heck of a lot to the small businesses that are sponsoring our events. So that's just my viewpoint on that.
Very much.
Yeah. I can completely agree with that layered approach. It has to start pre-event. It has to start in the pre-event marketing, creating the buzz, getting their logo and their links and their message, their offer out. It has to be at the event. And sometimes it's hard to get people who are in virtual environment to click on links or go places. So, having a multi-pronged approach to getting that information in front of the audience, and hopefully they'll follow, 1 or 2 of the leads that you've given them, the clicks, opportunities or calls to action. And then post event, so this just happened, and who was involved, and tell their story, and And in terms of creating sponsor packages, just like you have to plan your attendee journey. What is their experience from the moment they get the first invite through the post-event follow-up communication from you? What is your sponsor journey? How are you outreaching them? How are you connecting with them? How do they have the ability to customize their experience within your event? And how do you monetize that so that they see value in their investment of time, energy, resources, and money? Because it all takes that. And the other thing is, we have a lot of rules and regulations around privacy and sharing people's information. So, from the very front end, you have to have an opt-in for people to be willing to share their information with sponsors. And but if they don't want to share their information with sponsors, then, how can you get around that? How do you, as the event organizer, share your sponsor information with your attendees? Right? Then it becomes that reverse approach where you're sharing on behalf of your sponsors. You're doing a post-event document or a sponsor profile, or sending out a call to action post-event that your attendees can then choose to engage with and have a direct connection with your sponsor if they so wish. But at least that sponsor got out in front of them. So I think it's really understanding what the sponsor needs are, and then curating opportunities. Can they have a lounge? Can they sponsor a piece of, a networking hour or an activity? Can you send event boxes to attendees with sponsor pieces, sponsor items? Is there something tangible? Is it something that you can have a moment where everybody holds up their thing that they got the sponsor box and have a photo with and have a shared experience together, right? You be creative in how you engage those sponsors and engage them in the creativity of what can be done.
All right, so we are nearing our time, which just seems like it went by so fast, but I really want to hit a couple of more questions before we end. And this one, I feel like, was such a big question, and it's still a huge question today when it comes to building sponsorship packages in the virtual space. I mean, I have been on so many Facebook groups, Slack groups, that everyone, do you have a template? How do you even start? What does it mean? What does it mean when you're using a different platform when it's not Zoom? So I want to make sure that we hit and we talk about this because it really is very important to a lot of event producers, and a lot of producers still don't know how to go about building a sponsorship package when you talk about deals in the virtual event space. So I would just like to throw this question out to everyone.
I think you can have an idea on what you're offering people, but whatever platform you're using, you need to show them, walk them through it, give them a dry run to show, here's where you promote these sponsors. It doesn't have to be a sponsor booth. It could be, your agenda or collecting money, donations. You have to show them because people, for the most part, cannot visualize what you mean by a virtual booth. They just can't because it's not in our nature. So whatever platform you use, Remo's my main choice, but you have to show them and walk them through.
I think walking them through, I think telling your story as far as an event is important too. Being able to say that clearly and succinctly, because people are time challenged, right? So I think really clearly you have to be able to succinctly describe what it is that you're creating and then walk them through what the journey looks like. Who's going to be there? What's the space look like? What am I in it? What can I offer you? And and how could this pay off? Like, how am I going to, what does success look like, and how am I going to prove it to you at the end of the day? Like, what are you going to get as a result of this? And basically, the call to action, like, let's talk, let's have a conversation about. And I think that call to action also has to be a bit flexible, because honestly, if I wrap up a package and I hand it to you, if you don't like one thing of it, then it might not be for you. But if I say to you, here's this amazing package, but I want it to work for you, so tell me, how could we make this work better for you? I think that's the point where you do it, where you get them involved in it. And then maybe they say, this feature that you're giving me is not so important, but I really like this piece. And they know their business better than we will ever know. So honestly, here are the options. Let's talk about a package that works for you. That's my thought.
Absolutely. A sponsorship needs to be a living document. It needs to be a launching pad for conversation. It can't be the be all and end all. It has to, you have to be able to shape it to what the sponsor needs. The other important thing that we always do a stakeholder orientation with our clients, and that's so that the sponsors are set up for success, that they understand how to engage, they understand how to make the most out of their experience within the platform, so that they're not just dropped in and having to figure it out, that they feel a level of confidence that they can go and engage like they would at an actual trade show. And also, I think that we need to manage expectations. It's not like a trade show where you're going to get, a fishbowl full of business cards at the end that you can reach out to. It's not the same experience. So there's a little bit more work required from the sponsor to provide that engagement and that experience.
Offering your sponsors maybe another opportunity to network amongst themselves and showing them how the platform works and how they can value from it. You call it a VIP reception only for your stakeholders. They'll love it.
Yeah.
They'll learn how to platform and they'll meet themselves, because it takes time to develop relationships with folks, even more so virtually. Yeah.
Love that point, because we call them dress rehearsals, but really I love the positioning of that. I think so, if they're confident going into the event, they'll get so much more out of it. The majority of people out there, not the people on the stage here, obviously, but there's so many people out there that are technophobic. And they're embarrassed to say that because they see other people leading in this space. But I think everybody just wants us to guide them along and make them comfortable in the journey. And when showtime comes, we want them to get results. So that's part of getting them ready to reap the rewards of that and being ready to connect, like in real terms. Like, how many people did you actually connect with? I mean, getting another KPI could be how many private messages did you have? How many things like that can you follow up on? I mean, there's just so many KPIs we could touch on. And like Georgia Ann says, it really depends on the people we're going after. So, and I think that's where the secret sauce is actually getting inside the person's head and designing something perfectly for what they're trying to accomplish, and bringing in the right stakeholders.
Great. Thank you. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But before we leave, I have one more question, because this is an important question in the way that the event industry is moving forward. But new buzzword, right? Hybrid events. Everybody's talking about hybrid events. How can we not talk about it at this moment? So as the event industry moves into a more of a hybrid model, how do event producers handling maximizing their ROIs? I feel like that's a loaded question to end.
I'll jump in to start. I think hybrid is like a funky place, right? Because if we really think about it, we've been trying. Hybrid has not been solved yet, because before pandemic, people would throw up, a camera and then like stream the event and call it, oh, it's hybrid. Here, you can watch it on the camera, but it's like in the fourth row behind some guy's head. You can't really see it. No one cared about the virtual experience being high quality, high impact, right? And that's why, there's a bad taste in people. There was, before the pandemic, a bad taste in people's mouth when it came to virtual events, because it's like, you're just gonna have a camera in the room somewhere, and like, I'm not engaging, I'm not commenting. People are asking questions, my questions aren't being answered. And so what happened, it was just like this like ugly stepchild was like, finally got their seat at the table. Cinderella, the what's it called, the fairy came along, they became Cinderella for the night, and it's like now it's like at the forefront, like how can we make and actually show some love and support to virtual events. And then virtual events came in priority, and then in-person events kind of became the ugly stepchild. Like, I don't want COVID. I'm not going outside. And so now we have the opportunity to kind of set the stage of what ROI looks like for hybrid events, of what hybrid events even look like. And I think it starts with, determining it's going to look different for different industries, because, for example, a trade show hybrid event is not going to look the same as a conference hybrid event, or that could literally just be a room that's a very nice studio, and then the speakers come in and out, and then the attendees are all online, and maybe there's like some after party. That's a version of like a hybrid event. But we have to determine how our industries move into this phase, so that way we don't leave either format behind. We don't say, okay, no attendees in person, and then all the speakers in person, then only the attendees online, or we don't forget about one part of the event. Hybrid truly means bringing together the virtual, bringing together in person, and having an equal experience in both capacities. So using tools, I mentioned a platform earlier like Hover. I know Hopin is making a tool where you can message, like, the chat that's in person. They'll tell you, log into the app. Like, how you engage or ask questions is by the app. And so the people that are online are in the app, the people that are in person are in the app. So it's just like everyone gets that same kind of representation, no matter where they're participating from. And that same, they're sending packages to the people that are at home, if it's like a food or a swag, and then the people in person, come pick up the catering. So I think it really is up to us as we speak right now to set the stage of what ROIs and what KPIs look like for hybrid events moving forward.
Thank you, Georgianne. Kim, before you answer, I want to make sure that I integrate this question into my former question. Amber asked, how can we engage both audiences equally?
So absolutely, Amber, and Georgianne, you're right on the nose. It can't just be taking content from a live event and dumping it onto a virtual stage. There has to be basically a dedicated team mapping out the journey of the virtual attendee, as well as the team mapping out the journey of the live attendee. Maybe you've got a separate MC for the virtual, and that MC guides the experience and the content for the virtual attendee. Maybe you've got things that are exclusive to the virtual attendees, so that they can feel like they're not, experiencing a lot of FOMO, right? So that they actually feel like, okay, you know what? I'm not just a second thought. There is actual curation for my journey in this hybrid virtual environment. And then, I would love to find ways to bring those two communities together, whether it be the conference app, so that they can chat together and they can share in the experiences together, that they can be participating in the same polls, that they can be participating in other ways. It's the wild, wild west out there right now. It's a matter of figuring out, what your goals and objectives and honestly what your budget is, because hybrid is more expensive. It's more people, it's more technology. It's are you sending catering boxes and event boxes to your people who are attending hybrid because you're providing lunch for the people who are there in person. You know, it's thinking about how those two experiences will mesh and feel you know, value. And then how do you price hybrid? How do you price the hybrid ticket versus the in-person ticket? You know, the in-person attendee has hotels, they have travel, they have all of that. The hybrid attendee doesn't necessarily have all that, but everybody's used to paying nothing for Zoom. So, you know, how do you wrap your attendees, let alone your sponsors, let alone your clients' brain around this? It's going to be a fun journey, and lots of learning. And, you know, we could have a whole other conversation about the possibilities of hybrid.
I'm getting a lot of inquiries for hybrid, and I've got to ask, I think people have to ask themselves the question, is hybrid cool or is it necessary? Like, there are two totally different experiences. It is a whole heck of a lot of work joining them together in a way that makes sense. I think it opens up a whole bunch of different levels of sponsorship and such, and complexities go with that. But oftentimes I say, do we want to do that, or do we want to do something new? The people I'm surveying, and I guess to the last point I would make is survey your audience. I have been doing one group since the beginning of the pandemic. They always met traditionally. They are the huggiest group I have ever met in my life. And when we asked them, everybody's saying, oh, when we can get together, I miss the hugs. Oh, as soon as we can, oh, they're coming off lockdown. But when we actually surveyed the audience and asked, how many people are ready to show? How many people are ready to show? And here's your tickets. It was a completely different answer. So I feel like instead of, everybody just trying to shift back immediately, maybe it's a case of, hey, you've created hopefully something that's really good right now. So why don't we continue with that? And why don't we add this other thing back in and then slowly integrate? I think that might be better culturally for people to be able to, for people's comfort level, I think.
Thank you. Jared or Georgianne, I want to make sure, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Virtual events aren't going away. I think for the foreseeable future, there's going to be huggers, or what was again, Sue, with the words, I love it. I'm a hugger myself. The second time I meet you is usually a hug, a kiss on the cheek. But I grew up in Montreal. The whole concept is, early adopters of virtual events, we've positioned ourselves, at least those on the stage, as the experts in our industries virtually. How can we incorporate virtual events going forward? Are we only going to be doing hybrid? I have a feeling it's not going away. Probably in 3 years from now, it's so much more convenient for attendees to meet virtually. Meetings to meetings, back to back, all over the world. There's no time, there's no limit. And I'm not going back. I know what my niche is. I'm focused, and I'm just laser focused on using the remote platform.
Great.
Yeah, and just like a final, closing comment, I did, and you had mentioned in the beginning when you said my introduction, I started exploring virtual events from back in 2016. Before I really started looking into virtual events and virtual event production, I was one of those people that I didn't read audiobooks, or I didn't listen to audiobooks. I hated ebooks. I didn't go to, online events. I just did not like it. I felt like you lost some type of the experience until I was I had a child. I was like, all right, I need to be home for a little while. Either I lose this part or I figure out how to make it better. So I started studying and looking into how to make it better, going around different events, testing platforms, then discovered Remo in the summer of 2019. And then just coming up with different formulas and combinations and tools and things to say, okay, this is a way that we can make this process better, more authentic, more, feel good. Because it's not really about just the in-person or the virtual. It all comes back to what we were discussing before about the emotions and the feelings. Jared, he said, like you said, he wants to hug people. That's the feeling of, I see you, I appreciate you. Can we get that feeling online? Absolutely. How do we do it? That takes time to figure out per your audience, per your people, whatever you're doing. And so it's just really up to us as we are right now to say, I'm going to be really intentional about bringing people closer, no matter if they're between screens or if they're, 6 feet apart or if they're holding hands right next to each other, and just making and building out what that looks like. Virtual was here way before. It's, grown tremendously last year. It's not going away. In person is not going away. So we just have to figure out how to make these industries work for our respective audiences, ourselves, and our clients.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you all so very much. We have about 8 minutes before it ends. So I do want to take us back to the hotel lobby area. The panelists will be there. If you have any burning questions or you want to meet up with them one-on-one, we'll be there for just a little bit. Yes, Justin, it was great. I want to end with Noemi, curation and intention. And I feel like everyone spoke to that. And maybe we should change it to return on intention. ROI. That's my parting word of the day. So thank you, Georgianne. Thank you, Kimberly, Sue, and Jared. We could have kept on going. So I really appreciate your time and all of the knowledge that you shared with us today. Thank you so very much. All right. We'll see you in the lobby.